So there have been significant disruption happening in the transport planning market and the traffic engineering market. So my presentation today will be more about that how these technological advancements which are happening worldwide is going to impact the Middle East and what will be the impact of all these disruption in our day-to-day life. So the smart mobility system. I just want, before we get into the future of a smart mobility, I would like to define what a smart mobility system is. A smart mobility system is basically an efficient use of your existing physical infrastructure by combining it together with the technology, which we call it as a digital infrastructure. So once we combine the physical infrastructure means your roads, your highways, your bridges and whatever they exist on the ground now. When we combine it together with a digital infrastructure, and digital infrastructure is ITS and all the technology element, there is an efficient utilization which results into a lot of data management. So the whole this ecosystem of smart mobility, the way the data of ecosystem of this smart mobility is managed is basically into three different layers. The centralized layer of this ecosystem is the data hub. The data hub is a kind of hub where all the data is stored, and this data hub could be your iCloud servers. This data hub could be your traffic management control center, or the data hub could be any multimodal command centers kind of environment. The second layer is that how you communicate that data to the end device, which is through channels like NFCs, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. So this is the second layer of data management, and final layer is basically the data reaches to your mobile phone or the end device. I think when we use Google Maps and all these applications for our day-to-day traffic and navigation purposes, we only see the end device, but there is a lot of algorithm which happens, the calculation which happens in the background, which is part of this smart mobility system. And there are significant advancement happening in this ecosystem, which I'll be presenting in my presentation today. That what's going to happen in the future about the smart mobility. So what will be the future of the mobility? Future timeline is from now all the way up to 50 years or 100 years. So a lot of things will happen not instantaneously. It's going to happen through a transition period. So the very first thing which has already started happening, I think most of the people, those who comes from the transport planning and integrated transport background would understand that decision makers, authorities, they make use of a lot of transport models when making the decision about whether a new road is required, whether a new metro connection is required, what will be the demand in 2030, 2040, 2050. And the way these models were developed in the past was through the use of convention approach, where 5% of the sample travel demand data was collected through household surveys, through origin destination surveys, or through roadside interview surveys. And those 5% data were extrapolated to create the traffic model or transport model. But the way we were using the model in the past is gonna change now. It has already started changing. A lot of cities in US and also in Australia, they are going through the activity-based model approach. Activity-based model is a model that you don't have to go and do the surveys. You can use the mobile data information and track the activity of each and every individual throughout the day and use that information to develop the models. US government probably has given the permission to the transport authority, the privacy issues has been resolved. Those issues need to be resolved in Middle East as well. Once we have a proper privacy agreement between the mobile operator and the authorities, then I think that efficient use of the mobile data is a very, very robust source of data. Once we have that, then probably we'll have a very efficient transport model, activities-based model, which can be used for future planning purposes. So that you will see in maybe a couple of years' time. I mean, we have recently developed the transport model for Dubai, which is almost in the completion stage. So we have brought a lot of new technologies and all those new activities and segmentation while developing this model, because model are the first step of deciding that how your future infrastructure will look like. Technological advancement. I think over last decade we have seen significant disruption in the transport planning or traffic or our day-to-day mobility life, and this is all because of the technological advancement. So there are a couple of technological advancements which are being worked out in the background, which you'll see in a year's time or in a month's time. For example, your navigation systems. The way we navigate now is, I think most of us use Google Maps. When we use Google Maps, what it asks is ask you where you want to start your journey, where you want to end your journey, and then it gives you your shortest route or whatever it is. But it doesn't really give you different options. There are some options that whether you want to avoid toll or whether you want to avoid highway, But the application which are being worked in the background is, for example, if I'm a tourist in the city, for me travel time is not important. For me the sightseeing is probably more important. For me the tourist destination is more important. So those options, those will be like customized navigation systems where you can select your own option. You can say, I want to go from place A to B, but I want to select the best tourist route so that I can see a lot of tourist activities around it. Or if someone is very much environmentally concerned, he can select from A to B using the the least carbon emission routes based on, because carbon emission is directly related to the number of vehicles on the route. You might select the shortest route, but it might have a lot of vehicles on it. So I think using the environmental friendly route, you can customize and use those application part of it. Then ITS, most of the cities, I'm sure, I'm not very much with Riyadh, but I'm sure there is a very comprehensive and advanced traffic control center. Dubai also has got this new enterprise command center, which we call it EC3. But now I think all these cities and countries, they are using more comprehensive advanced technologies to manage the multimodal system. In the past, we used to call it traffic control center, but the whole objective of traffic control center was to control the traffic movement. But I think with the technology, we are staying away from the terminology of traffic. We are getting into more into the multimodal transport management, which is not only cars, it includes cars, your pedestrians, your buses, the way you move within your stations, the way you access your public transport, and all has to be controlled through the one single multimodal control center. And those with the kind of EC3 which has recently been developed in Dubai, which is controlling the red line as well as all the traffic movement along the corridor on different corridors of the city. So I think that pattern is going to follow a bit more in the Middle East, and that will also happen in Riyadh once this public transport system is fully implemented over here. Automated management system, where automated fare management system is basically one card for all. So you will see that in the future, maybe in a year's time or maybe in a month's time, you will have only one card which will be your ID, which will be your credit card, which will be your with that card you can shop from the grocery, from the shop you can pay the toll, on the same card you can buy the tickets. Like Dubai has got a NOL card where you can use for public transport, for metro. Those kind of integrated fare and payment channels are going to infiltrate into the transport market, and they will take over the old way of the payment and the transaction which used to happen in the past. AI is another area where significant advancements are happening. I mean, in the past we used to, all the traffic was managed through the centralized AI system. Centralized AI system means that all the data from different sensors of the city were communicated to a one centralized command center, and the command center was making the decision what should be the green time, what should be the red time. But now I think we are staying away from the centralized system. We are moving toward more of distributed artificial intelligence, which is DEAI. DEAI is a concept in which that every node in a system, which means every entity, every element is like your smartwatch, it could be your mobile phone, it could be your traffic signal. They will be able to make their own decisions, and they will have their own algorithm. They will not rely on the centralized system. So basically with the DEAI, everything will be connected and everything can communicate and make decisions with each other. So I think AI is going to play an important role in traffic management, public transport, and this you'll see influence of AI coming more and more into our day-to-day life. Shift of car ownership, which we have already started seeing in most of the cities. In the Middle East, generally the car ownership is in the range of 0.65, which is 650 cars on every 1,000 people, which is much higher than the European world. European world is 350 to 400 cars every 1,000 people. Middle East has got 650 cars. But what we have seen over the last couple of years, the car ownership has started declining, and the key reason being the new generation is not interested in the car ownership. They are more interested in the car availability. As long as they can get the car, whether it's from Uber and Careem, they are fine. They don't want to buy a car. I think if you can see on the screen, there was a survey done for different reasons, and this survey was more on the European context, not on the Middle East context. I think Middle East context, cars are much more affordable compared to the European context. So if you see these things, there is a big change in the need of the new millennial, new generation. They are moving away from the car ownership. They can easily access the car from Uber and Kareem to ride sharing and ride hailing activities. So why do they need to get into the hassle of buying a car, paying for insurance, paying for the parking? And this decline is going to happen a bit more and more. There was someone asked me a question that what will happen to the car industry if this car ownership is changing. My answer to that would be car ownership is changing, but the ownership is changing, but it's shifting. So basically, cars are no longer owned by the commuters or residents. That car owner decline is now being offset by the service provider. Now, the numbers of cars which are not being bought by the commuters are being bought by the Uber and Kareems and all those people. So, car purchase is not declining, but the car owners declining, and which will keep on happening. And mobility as service, again, this is because of the car ownership. Mobility, I think transport industry, if you see any city worldwide, the share of transport market from the GDP perspective is in the range of 20 to 25%, and that can go up to 25%. So transport market is a big market. And that is how I think this whole transport market has been commercialized, and this will continue to be commercialized. So now no longer transport is seen as a medium to move people from one place to another place. Transport has been seen more from the commercial point of view, with the ride sharing, with door-to-door connectivity services, with single payment channel options. I think the way we used to commute in the past is changing, and this will continue to change. But one key issue which we have in Middle East compared to the European world or North American is that the shift which is happening from the conventional way of transport to the mass, or you can say the mobility as service, or you can say the service industry, is only towards Uber and Kareem, because we don't have other options of public transport. Mobility as service, the whole concept of mobility of service is based, or it's surrounded around the public transport. So the whole objective was that instead of once you move from your car, instead of moving to Uber and Kareem, you move to public transport, but use Uber and Kareem as the first and last mile solution. But here in Middle East, since we really don't have in our cities a fully matured and grown up public transport system, so what is happening? People are, they're going away from the car, but they're shifting to Uber and Kareem. So that's not helping the traffic situation. In fact, a lot of people, those who are using the buses, they are also moving on the Uber and Kareem. So that's basically deteriorating the traffic and worsening it further. So that's not really a healthy environment. But with Riyadh Metro coming in future, I mean, I was talking to some gentleman sitting over there from Riyadh Metro, and I think those patterns will change, and the true meaning of mobility of service will be surrounded over public transport. So people will be using public transport in a couple of years' time, the metro connection. They will still use the Uber and Kareem or e-mobility or e-transit for first and last mile solution, not for necessarily making the full trips. Then micro-transit. Micro-transit is basically a more flexible version of bus transport. Gone are the days when we had to wait on the bus stop for bus number 42 to come to take to me a destination number B. I think with the micro-transit concept, which is becoming very popular these days, I think last month Sacramento Council, they developed the largest micro-transit network in North America. The micro-transit concept is more about the flexible buses, and these are mini version of the regular buses. So you have got the mini buses system. They will be available to you based on your call. This is called demand responsive kind of system. So you don't have to stick to your fixed route. For example, if I have to make to a journey and I have to go to airport through my hotel and pick up my luggage, I can just simply on the click of the mouse, I can say I have to go to hotel and then I have to go to the airport. Now that option is available. That option is only available for the Ubers and Kareems, but you cannot call buses to do that. But with this micro-transit concept, which is like a mini buses and more convenient environment in the buses, that has started happening, and it is not something new. I think only with all the autonomous transport and micro-transit thing, all the tests which have happened, that is really taking a lot of smart mobility share in the developed part of the world. Moya is a great example in Germany. If you see the Moya buses are fully autonomous buses. If you go inside the buses, it can carry up to 6 to 8 people, but it takes you to an environment, it takes you a convenience which is even more convenient than your car. You go over there are laptops, there are all these movies and all those things, so you can relax over there, get a feel of the private transport, and still go to your destination, and you can book that on your demand responsive transport system. And via ride, the simple thing, so via ride application, you can do that as well. So that's gonna come. But for micro transit to come, obviously you need to have a proper metro system first, because micro transit is complementing the metro system. The metro is spine of any city. Another one which is bit debatable. I think I have been into a lot of debates about micro mobility. There are a lot of there's a school of thought which says that micro mobility will not be popular in this region. They say micro mobility, to explain what micro mobility is basically mobility through light modes. Light modes means e-cycle, e-bikes, your skateboards, those kind of things. So a lot of people are saying that Middle East weather is not good, and based on Middle East culture, micro mobility will not survive over here. But over last 5 years, we have seen almost 2 to 3% of the transport share has been captured by the micro mobility. There is significant rise which is happening in the micro mobility. People are moving towards micro mobility, particularly if I take an example of Dubai. A lot of people are using these e-bikes. Karim announced last week this new system of e-bike, where they are going to expand the micro mobility network with more than 3,500 e-bikes with 350 docking stations. But they are using it as a first and last mile solution, so that as a commuter, I can use the e-bike and go to the metro station, park at the metro station, take the metro and go away to my destination wherever I want to go. So that will also come, and micro mobility will play an important role in the share of the transport market as well. I think about more than 500 billion US dollar share will be the part of this micro mobility market, which is going to happen soon. But again, with the Riyadh context, I would say that both micro mobility and micro transit will be more like a first and last mile solution. Once the metro is there, then you will start seeing those behaviors coming into action. Then we have a futuristic mode. There are a lot of tests happening in the futuristic modes. Skytrain is a concept which was thought on from the magnetic levitation point of view. In 2010, NASA and UD model, they signed an agreement where they said that they will start testing this technology. The technology is that you develop the viaduct, and then underneath the viaduct you can run the train, and the train will not touch the roof. So basically it will not go through the friction, so it can attain higher speed. It will only touch the roof. Spaces for the helicopters at the rooftop. So they are getting also future ready, that once this helicopter will happen, definitely there will be a big impact on the traffic, but also there will be impact on parking. So they have started working into that area. Dubai Mall, we are in the Dubai Mall with the Zabil expansion, they have identified a full roof for future proofing, which will be used for helicopters. In Hyperloop, I don't want to say much about the Hyperloop. I'm sure there have been a lot of presentations about the Hyperloop over the last couple of days. But this technology is also becoming quite popular, and there have been many companies have already working on it. And in a couple of years' time, Hyperloop probably would become one of important technology for communicating for at least for intercity commuting from one place to another. Maglev train. People those who have been to China would have seen this magnetic levitation train running from Shanghai airport to Shanghai city, which is about 31-kilometer network. This is again completely based on magnetic levitation. This is one of the only successful train which has been implemented, and you will see that this maglev kind of environment will keep on coming to the Middle East. Now I think for a public transport system, once the Riyadh metro or Dubai metro or Jeddah metro are fully developed, the next stage would be to connect the intercities. And to connect the intercities, this metro, if you see Dubai metro, the average speed of Dubai metro is 40 to 50 km per hour. So if you have to travel on a 40 to 50 km per hour on a metro, definitely you cannot move people away from the car. Car can go on 150 and 200. So which means for intercity commuting, you need faster mode of transport, and the alternative to that would be maglev or Hyperloop once that is fully implemented. Another area which significant advancement is happening, which is probably my area as well, is on the driverless technologies. When we say driverless transport, a lot of people associate it directly with the driverless cars and say, yeah, driverless car. driverless transport doesn't necessarily mean driverless cars. Driverless transport could be your driverless buses, could be your driverless pods, driverless people mover, and driverless metro. So if you see the metro system in most of the cities worldwide is already driverless. Dubai metro is driverless. Okay. So people are already using this driverless transport system which they are not even aware of. The GRT and PRT system, if you go to Abu Dhabi, the Masdar system, the pods in Masdar which work on demand response based transport, they are driverless. They sense each other and there is no driver over there. So those systems are already implemented. The only area where we have to work as expert, as transport planners, as technology expert, is how do we run these driverless technology in the mixed environment, because this is the biggest challenge. If we take the pod out and put it on the road where vehicles are being driven by the humans, that is a big challenge, and that is where a lot of work is needed, and I think a lot of technology will help us shape into that environment. Some of the key facts which I always highlight is driverless technology and driverless experiments have not evolved overnight. Okay, people were thinking about the driverless technology for last 100 years. Since 1920, there have been experiments running on driverless technology. In 1950, there was the first pilot run around the driverless technology which happened. I think the key disruption which happened in the driverless technology or driverless market was back in 2009-10 when Google came with this project of Waymo. Then I think a lot of people started thinking that this can be really achieved on the ground, and then over last 10 years we saw significant talk about driverless cars and driverless vehicle and driverless technology, many pilot runs. Some of them are successful, some of them have got issue, but that is happening, and obviously once that will come there will be big impacts in terms of emissions, in terms of traffic congestions, in terms of space utilization and other aspects as well. Key question is, why driverless technology? Why do we need driverless technology or this technology in the future? And again, I mean, a lot of us think that we are already driving, we are already experienced the driving. Why do we really need driverless transport? There could be hundreds of reasons. For me, my top 5 reasons is, the first one I have listed is enhanced mobility. The way we select our routes now is either through our own mind, okay, based on our perception. If I have to go from point A to point B, from one community to other, we already know in our mindset that this is the best route. Okay, or through the use of the navigation software, Waymo or Google or whatever it is, those are still not very live and real-time information. But once the driverless technology will come, then all this inefficiency about choosing the roads will go out, because driverless technology will be fully connected with each other. Every vehicle in the system, every node in the system will be connected with the other node. That means the travel time or the efficiency of the whole system can be, I will tell you in one of my slides when we did the modeling of driverless technology and how much traffic time will be reduced. That will significant, the reduction of travel time can be expected when this technology will come into place, just because that everyone will know, every vehicle will know that where other vehicle is, and if I choose a certain route, what will be my actual travel time. Then the value of time is a very important aspect. For example, in Dubai, the average travel time is about 35 to 40 minutes, which means if I have to travel up and down for my office work, every day about 1 hour 45 minutes are lost in traffic, or almost 2 hours are lost in traffic. So imagine if we can use those 2 hours more efficiently and more productively into doing more productive work. The average value of time in the region is in the range of 50 Saudi Riyal per hour, in that particular range. So imagine if I can use that 50 times 2, 100 Saudi Riyal doing something better, then definitely we'll be more productive in terms of the economic impact, and we can contribute to the economy as well. Then the third one is from the safety point of view. We all know that 90% of the accidents they do happen because of the human errors. Okay, so once you take the human error component out, you can definitely enhance the safety and integration of the overall system. And urban space, when a vehicle is driven on a normal lane through a manual driving environment, the capacity of the road is about 2000 vehicles per hour in a free flow environment. But once you replace that vehicle with autonomous transport, you can achieve the capacity of a road of almost in the range of 4,000 to 200 kilometer, 4,200 kilometer. That means you can get almost 110% more capacity than what you are getting now, which means with the number of lanes which you have, you can run much more vehicle, which will reduce the traffic congestion and which will also impact into other things. And environmental sustainability as well, we all know that carbon emissions and noise pollutions are directly related to the vehicle hours traveled and the delays component. Once you take the delay component out of it, once you reduce the vehicle hours, then that will directly impact the environmental sustainability. But the world of autonomous vehicles, the way the autonomous vehicles are going to operate, is not going to be as simple as we think. The way autonomous vehicle operate is basically again in the three layers. The technology is in three layers. One is your autonomous driving behavior. So once the autonomous vehicle is on a system, it should be able to communicate with its own system which are built. That is what we call autonomous behavior. It should be able to communicate with the human sitting within the car, which could be a passenger, and humans outside the car, which is the pedestrians and passers or whatever it is. And it should be able to communicate with the environment around it. Environment could be your digital environment, it could be your technology like vehicle to vehicle technology. So it should be able to communicate to the next vehicle, it should be able to communicate to the traffic signal, it should be able to communicate to the sensor around it. So a lot of communication is required, which is V2V technology, V2I technology, and this is what we call the third level of interaction. And once all this interaction do happen, the significant amount of data which will be produced, and this is the biggest challenge. I think if you ask me that do we have a right technology for autonomous vehicle to put on the road, I would say yeah, we have reached to a point that we have got a technology, we can roll out the autonomous vehicle. The technology, but the biggest challenge which we have is not the technology, is how do we manage all this data together for this technology to perform efficiently, and where do we get that data, and how that data has to be, you know, made private, and all those ethical intelligence and everything. So we did the modeling of Sheikh Zayed Road corridor. People, those who have been to Dubai would know Sheikh Zayed corridor, and we are currently doing the master plan for Dubai. But this was a separate exercise which we do more from the research point of view to see that what will be the impact if we remove the manual cars from Sheikh Zayed Road and replace them with more of an autonomous transport space. So once you replace them, your capacity of a road would increase, your reaction time of the vehicles will increase. So what will happen? So what we found that if your 25% of the vehicles are taken out from a road and replaced by autonomous transport, you get almost a reduction of about 15% of the traffic congestion. So your delays are reduced by almost 15%. And once you reach 100% autonomous transport, that means none of the vehicle are manually driven. Every vehicle on the system is autonomous. You get almost about 35% decrease in the traffic congestion. So, but this exercise was more of a linear association, which means that you simply replace this number of vehicles and complement that or replace that with autonomous vehicle. But there is one big challenge. The moment traffic, we all know the induced traffic impact, which means whenever there is additional capacity is created, then there is a shift from public transport back to the road system. So that also we saw out of this exercise, but we were not able to estimate that shift, because that shift we will only know once we really get to the point where we have seen the behavior of people, that how people will start moving once the autonomous vehicle will come on the road. Finally, about the autonomous vehicle technology. So as I said, that technology is there, the biggest challenge is the data management. There are some other challenges which are associated with the rollout of the future transport. Okay, one is the industry standards. A lot of people that design standards, if you go to any authority, whether in US or Europe or Middle East, all the authorities, they have got the standards which are more favorable to the manual way of driving. I think highway capacity manual or any manual or anything, they are just guiding you that how you design your road, how you design your system, how do you design your public transport to capture the manual way of driving. But there are not enough manual which guides the planners, which guides the authority, that how do we plan our system for the autonomous transport. So you will see that in the near future there will be new manuals, there will be new specifications, there will be new road design standards and public transport standards which will come into place to accommodate this autonomous driving behavior. Then a new governance model as well is very important, because autonomous vehicle, as I mentioned earlier, in the autonomous vehicle environment, everything needs to be connected. You cannot have one node not connected to the environment, because imagine if you are, let's say, you are driving, an autonomous vehicle is driving on a node, on the road, and there is something lying on the road which is not connected to a system, which autonomous vehicle is unable to detect to sensors or whatever it is, then what will happen is you will end up into crashes or whatever it is. So which means for autonomous vehicle to operate, every node, everything should be sensor based. Autonomous vehicle should be able to sense everything around it. So that's why I think we need a governance model which should be managing that, because you cannot in the future have electricity authority and transport authority and water authority and health authority. You need to have more of a smart city authority which should be able to connect everything together, and there should be data communication along or among all these entities, so that autonomous vehicle can operate. Insurance, we all know, let's say there is an accident on autonomous vehicle, and we have already seen in some of the pilot trend, who will be the responsible? The responsibility should go to the vehicle manufacturer, or should it go to the transport authority, or should it go to the pedestrian who is involved into that? So those kind of insurance issues need to be resolved as per the autonomous vehicle. Data privacy, and previously also I mentioned that is probably one of the biggest challenge, and not only autonomous vehicle. The cyber attacks, you know that cyber attacks cost almost about 1% of the global GDP. To be very precise, about 0.8% of the global GDP. And only 5% of the cyber attacks are reported. 95% of the cyber attacks, which are more of the smaller entities, are not even reported. So how do we manage that data? I think what happened at the Dallas airport back in 2018 or 2017, the cyber attackers, they hijacked the whole Wi-Fi system of Dallas airport, and everything was put on hold for a couple of days, because they couldn't really manage I think everyone's privacy was put on hold, and the full operation of that airport was put on hold. So I'm just trying to explain that data, sometimes our hacker world or cyber criminals are probably more advanced than us. They think at least 5 steps ahead of us. If we are creating a technology, in parallel they are also creating another technology so that they can overtake that. So that is the biggest challenge, that how do we manage all that data, and then again, once that data is created and we have got a cyber proofing element, how do we create a proper infrastructure around it, so that autonomous vehicle can operate in a very safe and efficient environment. And then machine and robo ethics. Machine ethics is basically ethic when we are programming. Again, I mean, autonomous vehicle, who will create the autonomous vehicle? It will be us. So which means that we will be putting the program. So let's say autonomous vehicle or a driverless vehicle is running on the road, and suddenly there is a truck crossing, or a manual truck crossing, and a pedestrian crossing. As a programmer, what will you write in the program? That should this autonomous vehicle hit the truck, or should it hit the pedestrian, or whatever it is. So I think those machine and robo ethics are very important to figure it out. That specification needs to be developed. That autonomous vehicles should you planned in a way so that your ethical intelligence is built over there. And also, you don't know, once you have planned and put the proper ethical intelligence, how they are going to react on the road. That is also very important, because that needs to be very complementary and thought of. And then new funding setup is my final thing on this. We really need a proper funding setup, because you cannot leave the autonomous vehicle experiments and tests done by the private operators or private manufacturers. I think all these authorities and governments and councils, they have to come together to start funding into those resources, which is not happening in Middle East. I know about, I'm sure in Saudi and other places, that has started happening. People have started allocating budget and funding. And the US, typical example is, if you see the northern part of US, all the councils, all the authorities, they have got budget for doing the Silicon Valley in the US, all these next generation technology tests and autonomous vehicle tests, and they have got dedicated funding, and that needs to be established in Sweden. So that was in summary about my presentation. I'm done with it. Open for any questions.
Let's put on your